2022 marks the final year of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings. With that in mind, we thought we'd have some fun by rewriting history.
That's right. So today we're going to decide what crews we would love to have seen go to the moon.
Have you got a dream Apollo crew? Let us know at Space and Things 1 on Twitter and at Space and Things Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We love hearing from you.
And please consider hitting that share button or leaving us a review. But right now, please enjoy episode 73 of the Space and Things Podcast.
Oh my God! Unbelievable.
You're listening to Space and Things with Dave Giles and Emily Carney.
I'm Emily Carney.
And I'm Dave Giles. Now, regular listeners will know that all our January episodes were pre-recorded in December due to the fact that I'm recording a new album at Abbey Road Studios. So, no up-to-date space news in this week's podcast. But this is a topic that Emily and I have talked about doing for a while. We're both fans of alternative history and the Apollo program. It's always fun to think about the what-ifs. So, I'm going to start with this question for Emily. Imagine the Apollo program didn't get cancelled after 17. Who would you have liked to go on Apollo 18, 19, and 20?
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Well, Apollo 18, my crew selections honestly go pretty closely with who they probably actually would have flown on those missions, because they had some people who I think deserved commanderships, I guess, who did not get to, or deserved moon missions, who I think needed to walk on the moon or should have had a chance to walk on the moon. And I've thrown a few wild cards in there too, just for fun. If Apollo had continued, I would have probably 18 would have been Dick Gordon, would be commanding. I would have loved to have seen him walk on the moon. That would have been awesome. I want to see Joe Engle as his lunar module pilot.
Yeah.
So he gets a chance to walk on the moon. And as a command module pilot, I would want to see Vance Brandt.
Nice. Yeah.
19, I would want to see, even though in the real Apollo timeline, he transitioned to management after his last Apollo mission. If I had a choice, I would have had Jim McDivitt command Apollo 19. I would have made Worden his lunar module pilot, but LMP is kind of the most junior astronaut on the mission. And I'm like, if Worden could have flown, he needed his own commandership. So let me think of who I want to be his LMP. Jack Lausma.
I thought that would happen.
I would have loved to have seen him walk on the moon. And maybe like Paul Weitz could have been the command module pilot.
Nice.
And for 20, if I had a choice, this would have been a real wild card because this person was not even in Houston with the NASA timeline at that time. But if nothing had happened and he hadn't been sent to exile at NASA Ames, I would have had Al Worden command 20. I don't know if this would have worked out well. They both had very strong personalities, but Phil Chapman would have walked on the moon because he was a geophysicist. Why not have him?
Yeah.
He's a scientist.
Absolutely.
You know? And I think their command module pilot should have been... I would like him to walk on the moon, but I don't think he would have minded this gig either. I think Bruce McCandless should have been the CMP because we know him as a mission specialist, but he was a pilot, so I'm sure he could have done just fine as a CMP.
Yeah, it's funny because I would have also put Bruce as a CMP.
Yeah.
I just think he's the personality to be a CMP, isn't he?
Yeah, because a command module pilot did a ton of flying, they did a ton of experiments, and they did a ton of, systems monitoring as well, so I think he would have done a great job at that. So those are my picks for Apollos 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah, I think the only difference I would have done is I would love to have seen Fredo command one.
You have a point. See, my vision of Apollo would have been like For All Mankind, where they would have just extended it would have been, they would have had an extended Apollo, which would have been amazing. So what are your picks?
Not too dissimilar from yours. I think your Apollo 18 crew is sound. I want to see Joe Engle walk on the moon, and I think Dick Gordon deserved 18 as the commander. So definitely Dick Gordon and Vance Brandt. He was like the not quite man in the Apollo programming. I mean, he eventually got his flight with the Apollo Soyuz mission, didn't he?
Yep. He was always on a backup crew, or he was always on a rescue.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
The rescue crew is really sad because they were almost going to go. And then it was like they kind of screwed themselves out of that because they figured out how to re-enter without a bunch of thrusters. They're like, oh, yeah, we can do it. And they were like, oh, we don't have to fly this then. Like, oh.
I think my Apollo 19 crew would have been Fredo with Ed Gibson in the lunar module.
Yeah.
Fredo and Gibbo.
Fredo and Gibbo. Yeah, that would have been awesome. See, I like that too. I'm not against that idea by any stretch. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that would have been a good lunar module for sure.
Yes.
I think Bruce McCandless, I think on that one I would have as CMP on that one.
That would have been awesome. Oh.
That would have been quite the crew. And I'm going to throw a real curveball in the mix here. I love the fact that you went with Jim McDivitt. I think, yeah, give him a command. And I would happily replace him out with Tom Stafford, one of those two. Let them have a command, and then stick Deke Slayton on the moon.
Wow. Okay, that's really awesome. But keep him alive this time. All right, keep him alive.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Right.
Spoiler for season 1 of For All Mankind. Yeah, that's awesome. What about your CMP?
I don't know. There's so many candidates from that fifth group of astronauts, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if anybody took the CMP spot on 20, it would have been somebody who ended up flying on Skylab.
Well, that's what I'm thinking as well.
Like Pogue or
Carr.
Lind or Carr or
exactly
or Whites.
I mean, you went with Whites, didn't you? So I don't have a problem with any of them being the final CMP. So we'll say that. We will say that. Now, obviously, they were all active astronauts at the time, Emily. Well, Deke kind of was, kind of wasn't.
Yeah.
I do want to also say I would love Jim Lovell on the moon somehow.
Yes, I would have loved that too. I wish if Apollo had been able to continue, I honestly wish they'd let him, let's say, Apollo was, we'd had 18, 19, 20 and they'd had an extended Apollo. I think it would have been great had they given him another chance.
Yeah.
Just because he got really close.
I mean, I think it's really interesting, isn't it, that him and Mike Collins, they both turned it down. My understanding is after Apollo 13, Jim was kind of offered a flight if he wanted one. And Mike Collins after 11 was offered a command if he wanted one, and he turned it down. So maybe they wouldn't have done it. But I would love to have seen both of those people on the moon. Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen that. I wish... I love, and I keep hearkening back to this, I love the timeline for All Mankind where even though another spoiler, he doesn't have a great fun flight. I loved it when they had Mike Collins command a mission. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the part of the first season where I think everybody almost crapped their pants. So yeah.
Absolutely.
But anyway.
And in a real twist to the history, let's have Mike Collins command one of them and have Wally Funk as his LMP.
Yes! Oh my God! That is freaking awesome!
Any of the Mercury 13, essentially, but I've gone with Wally because she's more in our thoughts recently, isn't she?
I always think about that. Like, what if Apollo had been extended? I'm thinking we would have seen the first women astronauts probably 73, 74, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
I feel with, the feminist movement in the United States at the time, there would have been sort of a demand like, okay, can't we have women walk on the moon already? Yeah. And there were women scientists and pilots, obviously, so why not,
Yeah, well, the last group of astronauts before the shuttle astronauts were chosen, which included women, were picked in 67, right?
Yeah, it was in 67.
Then there was the jump to 78. So there was that big gap where they didn't actually get any more astronauts because they had all these astronauts that hadn't flown. And a lot of them didn't fly until the shuttle. So that's pretty crazy. But you're right. If suddenly Apollo gets extended to maybe 30, they would have needed more astronauts. Yeah, even with all those extras, they would have needed to, especially if they would also, like in For All Mankind, done Skylab and other things, and shuttle was in development as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're getting very, very crazy now.
If that had been a possibility, they would have had to hire more people, I think, and probably bring women and, a more diverse population into NASA. Like you would have seen somebody like Guy Bluford maybe walking on the moon, which would have been awesome. So
obviously you've gone to what you think would have been legitimate crews, but let's imagine, right, so we all knew that Apollo 12 were like the crew that got on. Pick a crew that you just think would be nuts, that actually would be the complete opposite of 12.
I actually wrote an article about this once, and it wasn't even an article. It was a piece I wrote years ago, and it was about the worst Apollo mission crew ever. I think the worst idea to put an Apollo crew together would have been, and this is a hypothetical if he hadn't died in Apollo 1, Grissom, Borman, and Aldrin. They would have all killed each other. I wrote an article about it, and it was basically, their premise was like Wally Schirra was in charge of crew rotations, and he just didn't give a crap, because he was like, whatever. So he just put the worst suited people together on the mission. I think that actually Grissom and Borman were supposed to fly on Gemini 3 together, but it was realized pretty quickly that those two personalities wouldn't have vibed very well together. So they replaced Borman with John Young. So yeah. I hate to say Buzz.
Yeah.
Great guy, but interesting fella.
It's interesting with Frank, isn't it? Because he had 2 missions and he commanded both of them. Same as Gene McDivitt as well. But I wonder whether he ever could have been a number 2. I wonder whether he was such a strong leader that actually being number 2 wasn't really something that would have suited him at all. So you're right, putting him in that position under someone like Gus would have been quite a mission.
Oh my God, yeah. You got 3 alphas together, 3 alphas in this. Oh my God. I think me and my friend wrote it together, and we were like, what if Al Bean made a painting about this mission? It would just be like a silhouette of a fist against the moon or something.
Amazing.
It was just so bad. But yeah, I think that wouldn't have gone too well. I don't think they would have made it off the pad. I made up a mid-70s Skylab mission once, and I was like, I think I made it like Brand, Brian O'Leary, and somebody else. And it was, Brian O'Leary drugged everybody before the mission. Like you told me these were vitamins. These are vitamins for your soul. Like, oh my God.
Tripping in space. I don't think that's been done yet, has it? Well, maybe it has, but we don't know about it.
It would have been a first for NASA, definitely. Yeah, if you don't know who Brian O'Leary is, I've written about him. Just Google him. He was a
character.
He was very briefly an astronaut.
It still blows my mind that he got selected.
That would be almost as bad as like selecting
Jake Paul.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh my God. Yeah, it would almost be as bad as selecting me. Like, seriously, like, oh my God. He was, except I would love to fly a plane, man. I would love to learn how to fly. He didn't even want to fly a plane. So, yeah.
Just nuts. Just how did that end up happening? Absolute crazy. Yeah, so I can't think of any other scenario, especially with the group of astronauts that are there, that would have been a nightmare, like a real nightmare. I think that one that you've selected is definitely the.
Yeah, that's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Unless you, I think Young and Borman would have gotten along fine. I think if you put Buzz and Young together, for some reason that doesn't sound right, because Young was very kind of taciturn and Buzz is not.
Yeah.
So I think that wouldn't have worked out well. On a serious note, I really think Deke knew his people very well. You can see that he really picked out, I think, the best personalities that's kind of vibed well with each other.
Yeah.
I think him putting Borman with Lovell was a stroke of genius, because Borman, as you said, kind of an alpha male, whereas Lovell is kind of gregarious and more of a light touch. So I think that worked out just amazingly.
Yeah, the two of them together vibe off each other as well really well when you see them together. Even now, it's incredible to see. I'm trying to think if there is a way we can get Ron Evans and Charlie Duke up together, because I think the two of them would be so excitable. But I think it's difficult because you're right, you wouldn't want to put Ron as a lunar module pilot after being CMP. And Charlie would want an upgrade as well. You can't imagine him wanting to go back twice as LMP. But God, could you imagine Ron Evans and Charlie Duke walking around on the moon together?
Yeah, that would have been awesome. I wish people like that had been able to fly again, even if it was on the space shuttle or something like that. It's almost like another sort of a For All Mankind scenario where they had people from the Apollo era sort of on the, in the rotation in 1983. I sort of wish we'd seen that. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. How'd you like this as an Apollo crew, by the way?
Oh, no.
Al Shepard, John Glenn, and Frank Borman.
No. Something does not... maybe Glenn and Shepard wouldn't have murdered each other, but I think for some reason, something is telling me... I don't know, in a perverse way, I think Shepard and Borman may have worked together. But I think there would be some tension, definitely, yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's an Ultimate Joker's crew as well, and Wally would be in that, wouldn't he?
Probably Wally, Al Warden, and I don't know, Ron Evans, maybe. That would be the All Doofuses crew.
Yeah, the thing is, though, Al, when he flew, wasn't as jokey.
Was serious.
He was quite serious, wasn't he? So maybe...
Yeah, and Evans was very serious, too, when he was flying in space. It's funny because when you look at their EVAs, Al is so, bam, 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 I'm done, I'm going back in. He's really, super focused and serious. Whereas you could tell Evans is just having,
the best time.
He's doing his job, but he's having a lot of fun. Yeah. And it's probably because Al knew he was the first to do it. He didn't want to mess it up in any way, whereas Evans was probably a little more practiced and relaxed. Maybe not more practiced, but I think he was more sort of okay, I'm going to enjoy my moment,
Absolutely. So, listeners, if you've got any thoughts on what we have said, or if you have your own dream cruise or nightmare cruise, please let us know. This is a subject we just love putting all of them together. And it's like when you watch For All Mankind, for those of you who have, in season 2, you'll see a wall in the astronaut selection office where it's just covered in images of astronauts and him juggling them around for various crews. And I would just love that job at that point. Get all the passport photos up on the wall of all the different guys, or all their astronaut portraits, and just move them around with different crews and see which ones would come. It just is fun, isn't it? It's just fun to think about.
Yeah, I love that part of the show because I was like, that is so cool. Oh my gosh. I'm a little obsessed with that show.
Right, so let's wrap this up, shall we?
Hello there, sports fans. You got a little bit of me plus Neil's in the center couch, and Buzz is doing the camera work this time. Roger. Well, I put on a coat and tie if I'd known about this ahead of time.
That's all we have time for this week. Don't forget to let us know who you would love to have seen fly on Apollo. We love these kinds of discussions.
We really do. Thank you again for all the support. We're back next week with more, but don't forget, in space, no one can hear you stream.
Space and Things has been brought to you by And Things Productions.